What due to experience do you know not to mess with? Story 1. Chickens while there are chicks present. My brother is a cruel little doo-doo head who liked being mean to animals while we were kids. He liked hurting them for the feeling of power it gave him. So he hurt a lot of small wildlife, like frogs and garter snakes and mice. When that stopped being enough, he decided to go after livestock. We had chickens. There was a great big rooster and his ladies, and all of them had chicks. My job was to take care of the chickens, feed them, water them, collect eggs, etc. My brother was bigger and stronger than me, so one day he decided to have fun and grabbed up one of the little chicks in the coop and squeezed it until it started to scream for help. My attempts to stop him did nothing. Now the chickens were used to me picking up the chicks and petting them, so they weren't alarmed when my brother picked up the chick. When it screamed, however, all hell broke loose. All the chickens went after him, going for his face and eyes. The rooster had spurs on his legs over an inch long, and he cut big grooves on my brother's face, missing his eyes by millimeters. They swarmed him and bullied him until he dropped the chick and ran out of the coop, crying with blood on his face. He was 10 at the time and should have known better. Did he stop being mean to animals? No. Did they punish him for it when they could? The animals sure did. Chickens are very much like the cuckoos in the Zelda games. If you hurt one, they will all swarm you. Edit. I got several questions, and I will detail them here so people don't have to go digging through comments. Yes, my brother and I were both abused by our father. Our mother was a kind woman who did her best to nurture and discipline my brother. She died when I was 7 years old, and my brother at 9 years old from cancer. My father went off the deep end and took out his rage on us both. He worked 2 shifts at a factory daily and did not want to be disturbed when home, or he would beat us. So no, there was no adult supervision, and we were left to our own devices, except for a weekend here and there, when our maternal grandmother would have us. She also did her best, but our father excused and enabled my brother's behavior because he was more valuable in his eyes compared to me, a sickly girl. We did go to school. Yes, CPS was called a couple times, and my father told everyone that I was a pathological liar, so nothing came of it. My brother most likely had a genetic flaw or some inherited mental health disorder that kept my brother from feeling empathy. However, our father did not believe in mental health services, so my brother never got therapy or help. I fully believe he would have turned out to be a different person if he had had these services. Instead, he was isolated, abused, and enabled. It made him entitled and gave him the need to exert his will over everyone. If he wanted something, he simply took it, including my innocence. He grew up into a terrible adult. No, he didn't end anyone's life. I don't believe he would end anyone's life because he likes to manipulate people, and you can't manipulate a person who's not alive. He instead became a thief, an assaulter, and fell hard into drug use. The last time I spoke to him was in 2013. I have fully cut him off from my life and have not spoken to him since. Maybe he's changed in these 10 years, but I have no way of knowing. Occasionally, I scan obituaries looking for his name, but otherwise I have nothing to do with him. I acknowledge that he had a messed up beginning like I did. However, he willfully chose to hurt me and has never apologized or acknowledged what he did to me, even as adults. I may have forgiven him if he had at least acknowledged what he did was wrong, but he believes he did nothing wrong. So for my health and safety, I chose to cut him out. I have diagnosed CPTSD that I will have for the rest of my life. However, I spent the last decade in therapy learning how to cope and live with what happened to me. Some days are better than others, but I am genuinely happy and am in a safe place, several states away and surrounded by my friends, who have become my new loving family. So yes, I'm okay now. I don't fear him or my father coming after me because they are lazy cowards, and I'm too strong now to allow them to hurt me. If any of them contact me about giving up a kidney or a liver lobe, I will laugh in their faces and then get a restraining order. Story 2. Intuition. If something feels wrong, stop. It doesn't matter if it's stepping out onto a snow-covered slope, pulling up to a sketchy gas station, or putting too small a piece of wood in a table router. Listen when your brain tells you this is a bad idea. I read an article that intuition is your subconscious brain picking up on cues that you are unaware of. After I read that article, I paid more attention to it. The gift of fear gets talked about a lot when gut feelings come up. I'm convinced my intuition saved me, very pregnant, slow-moving, and my daughter, too, and then unborn son from being kidnapped. Really weird situation happened at our work when I was alone with my daughter. There was a man with sunglasses a ways away from us, just looking around, avoiding looking at us. When a woman, 30s maybe, walked up and started asking just about my daughter, her age, things she liked, etc., I wouldn't have found this odd, but she had no children with her, and made no other conversation except to ask about my daughter. I looked over at the man who was now glancing at us, and on his phone. I had the feeling then that we were in danger, and I needed to get us someplace safe, around other people. We walked, and then ran to the Kroger near us, waited an hour, and the person that gave me the feeling to flee was still circling the store in her car. Trust your gut. I once had a man following me in the forest. I was about 21. It was a hiking trail. He was late middle-aged, clean-cut, and kept a long distance. But I had a bad feeling about him I couldn't shake. I took a stand and prepared to fight. I carried a kabar then, but the man got lost. There were many turns and whys. When I got back to my car, he had put a note through my open sunroof about how large his wiener was, or something like that, and with some thoughts about me. Thanks, gut. Story 3, ladders. I worked in an ED at a major trauma center, and the number of otherwise healthy people who came in paralyzed or soon to be dead from falling off ladders was eye-opening. My ex's dad was a healthy and still very active man who was about to turn 70, and I mean healthy, lived in a house on a mountain and spent his mornings hiking trails the average person half his age would get winded by. He had literally just retired. He and his wife were about to head out on a long vacation, so he was shutting down the house and noticed a small leak in one of their bathroom ceilings. Decided to check it out himself. He fell off the ladder and basically ping-ponged his skull the whole way down. Instantly a vegetable. Stayed that way for 8 months before passing. This made me and ex look up ladder injuries, and my takeaway is this. If you're not being paid to be on a ladder, pay someone to be on a ladder for you. Paid ladder guy here, take this person's advice. Studies show that keeping a ladder in the house is more dangerous than a loaded gun. That's why I own 10 guns, in case some maniac tries to sneak in a ladder. Grunkle Stan, Gravity Falls. I climb trees for a living. I've been in 100-plus foot tall trees plenty of times. No worries. If I get 8 feet up on a ladder, I start to get nervous. They're great tools, but can be sketchy as a mofo. One of the sketchiest things I've ever done at a job is use a 50-foot ladder. It was terrifying. Story 4. Head injuries. I had a single friend that got into a barroom scuffle. He got knocked down and hit him on a tiled floor. Got back up and said, "That's it for tonight." He lived alone, and that was on a Friday night. When he didn't show for work on Monday with a no call, that raised some eyebrows. When he didn't show on Tuesday, someone went out to his place and broke in after no answer. He was dead on the kitchen floor. Doctor guessed a brain bleed. I think about him every time I see a video of someone getting knocked out. Edit. It's only been a couple of hours since I've posted this comment, and I don't regret saying it, but I'm sorry for having dredged up so many sad stories. Movies and TV shows conditioned us to think fights are no big deal. They're super dangerous and shouldn't be entered lightly. This is why we have the One Punch Can Kill campaign in Australia. If you hit someone on a night out or coward punch anyone, you're pretty much viewed as the lowest of low in the eyes of Australians. Like you're in the same category as murderers. We don't tolerate it. Knocking someone out because you can't handle your liquor is one of the most un-Australian things you can do. I love the idea of that campaign. We need that here in America. And the whole head stomping thing. That should be charged as attempted murder, presuming the victim lives. You don't do that unless you intend to kill the person. One punch has an 8-year jail sentence here. Story 5. Precipitation when it's cold outside. I got caught in a snowstorm in Shenandoah National Park in March 2019. It was 50 in the valley, but I got 2 feet of snow on the top of the ridge. The forecast did not call for any precipitation that day. I was hiking on the Appalachian Trail and thought that a few flurries were nothing to worry about. I left a lean-to shelter that would have kept me dry and protected from the wind. I hiked less than 6 miles and was struggling to move forward because the snow was so deep. I was soaked to the bone, freezing cold, and beginning to lose fine muscle control in my fingers. The trail followed the side of a ridge and was not providing me any flat spaces to set up a tent. I eventually found a clearing where some power lines crossed the trail and struggled to get my tent erected despite the loss of feeling in my fingers. Once my tent was set up, I got my sleeping pad and sleeping bag deployed, got out of my wet clothes, and crawled into the bag for an hour to warm up. I didn't even have a cell signal where I could just let someone know my exact location and that I was okay. I had been in contact the previous evening, so my girlfriend knew my location to within a couple of miles. The snowstorm lasted all night, and I had to spend a full 24 hours in the tent before the snow stopped. The next day, after the snow stopped, I packed up my camp and kept hiking through the 2 feet of snow. The trail crossed Skyline Drive after a short distance, and I followed that road for about 9 miles to the nearest park entrance. I called the shuttle and spent the night in Waynesboro, Virginia at a hiker hostel. The warm shower, boot dryer, and warm food were exquisite. When you make an error in judgment in the wilderness, the goal is to survive long enough to learn from your mistake. I learned my lesson. I will not screw around when dealing with precipitation and cold weather. If there's any doubt, I will just hunker down and wait for the wet weather to pass. Story 6. My health. Getting older, you rediscover all those old hurts. When I was 20, I hyperextended both elbows playing volleyball. 15 years later, my elbow started aching in the winter. Also, my teeth. It falls under health, but not everyone thinks about the dentist when they think about health. If you're reading this, please floss. It's a small thing that can make a huge difference later. Trust me. I've started flossing daily, late 30s, and every night I'm like, why the F wasn't I doing this my whole life? The stuff that comes out sure explains all my cavities. Yep, I really started giving a care about flossing when I went to the dentist and they told me I had 7 cavities. I said, how can I have 7? I brush twice a day and use mouthwash. To my surprise, all my cavities were between my teeth. That sucked. Now I floss. Bonus story, the last time I went to get my teeth cleaned, I apologized to the dental hygienist because I was, and still am, going through a breakup and have been skipping flossing and brushing some days. She laughs and says something to the effect of, "Oh, you're fine. I wished more people came in like your teeth. It's clean." And that was the first time I've ever had a dental anything tell me that they were proud of me rather than disappointed. That is all. Story 7. Vibrating logs in the forest. Don't investigate. Don't kick it. Don't throw things at it. It is always hornets. Reminds me of the post that said something like, no matter how superstitious you aren't, you still shouldn't go near suspiciously clean bones in the forest, because those bones may have been cleaned off by fire ants that decided to nest around the bones for more convenient access. I am dang glad we don't have fire ants where I live. Dude, the other week I was driving home and I felt a stubby burning sensation in my side. Had no clue what it was until I pulled into my driveway and found a bunch of fire ants in my car. One had crawled between my shirt and pants, then freaked out when it was stuck and bit the crap out of me. I had at least 4 bites on me. It's been 2 or 3 weeks and they're still red. Screw fire ants. I've gotten fire ants in my pants before and it's the worst, but I really gave my coworkers a laugh when I started frantically stripping for no apparent reason. Story 8. Drowsy driving. ETA, back in 2015, I had an incident where I fell asleep behind the wheel. It was in mid-August, and I had fallen asleep on my way home from work after a 16-hour night shift because my job messed up the schedule. We couldn't work more than 12 in a single shift. All I remember is I was driving, then I was waking up in a hospital 4 hours away from home. No clue where I was or what happened. I had suffered a major TBI and have been mentally different ever since. Had a pretty major concussion following the accident. It happened in the back roads of southern Idaho, and I was lucky to have come out of it with 0 broken bones. Everyone at the hospital was saying I was lucky to have survived. There were witnesses who saw the whole wreck, a couple of high schoolers on their lunch. I read the police report and witness statements, and according to them, my car rolled 6.5 times, ended wheels up, and I was partially ejected, laying half in and half out of the car through the window. My seatbelt buckle had broken as the car was coming to rest. Weren't there a test people did where someone who had doubled the legal limit was still a better driver than someone who didn't sleep for 25 hours? Story 9. Ticks. Lyme disease sucks, y'all. Ended up with bilateral Bell's palsy because of it, and my joints scream at me like I'm a much older man, and that is not even the worst thing that ticks carry. I got Lyme's disease and had no idea. I felt awful and went to see the doctor. He said my symptoms were classic Lyme's disease. I was confused because I didn't have the ring. Doctor told me to drop my pants and bend over. Sure enough, there was the ring, right between my bum cheeks. He said I probably got a bit right on my bunghole and ripped the tick out when I wiped, but the head was still embedded and transferred the disease to me. Fortunately, recovered with no long-term issues. Doctor, I feel awful. Show me your butthole immediately. I don't like this episode of House. Story 10. Being careless in the shower. A few years ago, I was showering and I forgot the new bottle of conditioner sitting on the counter. I slipped on some shampoo residue in a rush to get out of the shower because I do not like cold air. I slammed my ribs against the porcelain tub, completely knocked the wind out of me. But I somehow managed to crawl out of the shower and bathroom to make it to my phone, genuinely thinking I would have to call an ambulance to take my naked butt to the hospital. Thankfully, that wasn't necessary, as I laid down and caught my breath. But I had pretty bad rib pain for at least a month after, and only a tiny bruise to show for it. After that experience, I could absolutely see how falling in the shower can kill a person. Anyway, now I don't rush when exiting the shower, and I always bring my phone in the bathroom because that naked wet crawl on the floor to retrieve it was humiliating, and I'd rather not go through it again. Story 11. Never, never trust a trench or a hole over your shoulders deep. You will die a horrible death. Yes, at the beach too. I think the rule is belly deep. Any higher and the dirt or whatever falling in can crush your lungs and make it impossible to breathe. Beach patrol at the beaches we go to say no higher than the knee of the shortest person in your group. Happened to a family I knew. Family was at the beach, playing in the sand. Some of the older kids dug a large hole in the sand. Youngest kid, 6 years old, started playing in the hole and it collapsed on him. They couldn't get to him in time and he passed away. New fear unlocked. Being the dad in that situation. Story 12. Not immediately washing and disinfecting an open wound. My mom knew a guy that had to have his leg chopped off because a cut got infected. It was insane. Chop. The infection kept coming. Chop some more. He survived, but he lost a leg. Spent a long time in the hospital. My grandfather passed away from an infection after getting his toenails clipped. The caregiver accidentally nicked him. He's the reason that certain home health companies will not allow their aides to trim nails. Edit, no, there was no lawsuit. I don't remember the details because this was in January. Story 13. Waves. Newbie body surfer misjudged a 6-foot wave and nearly drowned. I was standing about waist deep at the beach and a wave knocked me on my butt, pulled me out a little, and washed me back up. All I remember was sky and water. My friends thought a riptide got me. Absolutely, the ocean. Grew up near the surf, a good, confident ocean swimmer, went out for a midnight swim and got caught in a rip. Rescued by my surfer cousins. Even gentle currents made me panic for about 20 years after that. Story 14. Aggressive drivers. Just let them go. Same. I learned that people like to drive while armed, and they will pull it out for any little thing these days. Yup, I remember when I was in middle school, there was a grandma and very young grandson who honked on the horn after a dude cut her off and almost hit her. The guy retaliated by shooting at the car, killing the grandson. Story 15. The pancreas. Seriously, do not mess with the pancreas. Okay, fair enough. However, the beatings on the liver will continue until its attitude improves. Story 16. Meth. Ruined my life for a while, and I had to fight tooth and nail to get it back. 18 months clean. For real, when you hear not to try meth, not even once, heed that warning. Same here. Congrats. It's still hard for me to shake the embarrassing things I did while high. Don't judge past you with the knowledge you have today. Find peace in your growth. Story 17. Trusting people's blinkers to mean they are turning. My driver's ed teacher always said, the only thing a blinker truly tells you is that the bulb is working. It stuck with me. Alternatively, trusting people's lack of blinkers to mean they are going straight. Story 18. Water, rivers, current. I'm a good swimmer, and I wanted to swim in a river where the current seemed tame. Boy, was I wrong. Just a small moving body of water dragged my poor body like a leaf in the wind. Story 19. Fridays. In the IT world, we call it Read-Only Friday. Don't change anything. If I see another engineer on the team do a deployment on Friday, I set myself to Do Not Disturb. We have informal Fridays that are high-priority bug fixes only guidelines. Story 20. Mandolins. The kitchen gadgets, not the instruments. They sell gloves to wear while using these that keep you from slicing your fingertips off. Really helpful. Story 21. If someone at work tries to badmouth someone else and they ask you about what you think about that person, just keep your mouth shut. Story 22. Garage door springs. Pay a professional to mess with that stuff. Dear Lord, that's terrifying. The tension on those things is immense. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.